Now, where was I? You're an idiot. How are we doing, everyone? Oh, sorry, Mr. Dragonfly. I'll show you more of him in a minute. But I thought I'd bring you back and show you the nature pond because I really haven't done that much to it, but so much has happened and so much has appeared. So this nature pond is about 3 months old now, roughly. The video for it was released 3 months ago, so yeah, it's just over 3 months old. And I'll be honest, I am surprised and impressed by the amount of stuff and bugs and bees and birds and, well, just all the different animals that are making use of this essentially small pond in my back garden. So over the course of these last 3 months, I really haven't touched it that much. I may have topped it up a few times when we had the really hot weather, but now we're back to grey skies and rain, so yeah, haven't topped it up in a little while, to be honest. I've just been letting the rain top it up. Now, obviously, the thing that you want with this pond is you want things to turn up, and that has happened in abundance. We have had different hoverflies, different things, but the main group that turned up that I was really impressed with, and I knew that they were already living in my garden and in the area, but was a group of frogs. So we have got, now I've seen about 8 adults living in this pond. I can't currently see them in here today. They are probably around somewhere or off hunting for slugs and snails and something to eat. But they have been residing in here fairly often, sat in amongst the plant at the back, just chilling out. Now, alongside that, obviously, I put in a whole bucket full of tadpoles. And at one point, I was quite worried because I could not see them, like none of them. And then all of a sudden, the plant started to flourish, the plant started to grow, and there was life again. So they were just hiding in amongst the rocks and the bits and pieces that I put in the bottom. But we have now froglets everywhere. We still do have some tadpoles, and they're starting to get legs. I can't currently see any buzzing about. There's a little tadpole that I can see over there. But yeah, so the tadpoles have done really, really well in here as well. Now, throughout this video, I do want to answer a lot of the questions that you all had on nature ponds and algae and frogs and all sorts of stuff. So there will be random questions that I'll drop into this video that you have left in the comments. And the first comment that I want to bring up is, what do I feed everything in here? Well, most of the time, if you've got loads of plants, loads of, well, algae, as bad as that sounds, you don't necessarily want algae, but it is all part of the ecosystem. So if you've got that going on in there, plants, surface areas for things to live off of, so the rocks in the bottom, maybe some aquarium safe wood in there as well. So again, it's going to create biofilms and life. If you've got all of that in there, you don't necessarily need to feed. But if your pond's quite new, then it is well worth feeding. So with the tadpoles, I was just chucking in some tadpole food. So this is just some NT Labs tadpole food. It does what it says on the tin. It is just a small granular food. Hang on, I'll get some out for you. Look. So it's just that. There you go. And that's it. A little sprinkle of that every now and again will just help keep, well, everything fed in there. Probably not that much, to be fair. Now, the good thing with that is having a food source like that, as long as you don't overdo it, will actually help feed a lot of the other animals in there. Snails that are buzzing around in the pond are going to feed off of that. A lot of the insect larvae, a lot of the bugs, a lot of the, well, tadpoles that we're obviously trying to feed. It will just help build up that ecosystem and give everything a bit of a food source, like I say, especially in a new pond. Now, obviously, frogs turn up to most people's ponds eventually in the UK. We've got a good population of frogs, even though they've got their issues, they've got their problems that they're trying to fight against, but we do normally get frogs. So it's cool to see them taking up residence in here, but what else have we seen? Well, the one other thing that we've seen, and I'm just looking for one now and seeing if I can spot one, but we've actually had some newts in here, or newt poles, I suppose you would say, and they have been buzzing around. I've seen at least 3. I've caught one out so that I got one on video, because as soon as you normally go anywhere near them, off they go to the bottom of the pond. Now, I'm not 100% sure where they've come from. It could be that this was set up and they laid some spawn into here. I did obviously move some oxygenating plant and the irises over from the other pond, so it might have been that there was some eggs on there. So they could have come from any one of those sources, to be honest. I have got adult newts in the garden that I found when I was cleaning out my pond that I didn't know were here. So it's possible that they laid eggs in my main pond and then I've just transferred them across. Or maybe they laid them in here, but I think that would be too quick. I don't think they would hatch that quickly. But that's really cool to see, because because they've grown up in here. They're now looking like proper newts, and hopefully they'll get through to adulthood, and then, well, we'll have a bigger newt population and a bit more space for them to live in. Also, this little bit of junkus here, before anyone points out in the comments, yes, it does keep poking me in the mouth, and yeah, I'm going to end up eating it in a minute. So on top of our amphibians, there has been loads of other life turning up. Well, I say turning up. Now, I did put some ram's horn snails in here, and they have bred. We have got baby ram's horn snails everywhere, which is a great thing because they're going to provide a food source for a lot of animals. They are going to get eaten, the smaller ones. But the good thing is they're going to be eating the algae as well. So they're going to be going around and helping me clean up. So it's good to see a population of them booming. Now, a pond like this does attract a huge amount of bugs and beasties and weird and wonderful things. So we have had diving beetles in here, we have had back swimmers, we've had pond skaters. I think I've got footage of all of these because it's not often that I would come out here and see the frogs, the newts, the back swimmers, everything on one day. You know, it's probably, well, it's actually over the course of the last 3 months that I've spotted all of this stuff going on. Now, the coolest thing that I've just come to film this morning, and it wasn't obviously planned, but this little guy here. Now, this little guy is a dragonfly that has emerged and is slowly warming up and slowly drying out, essentially to take flight and then go off and reproduce, really. Now, I'm pretty sure that these were not laid in here. With dragonflies, a lot of the time they spend 90-95% of their life under the water. They're in their nymph form, which is that weird looking horrible bug thing. Now, I have seen 2 or 3 of the sheds, like where they essentially come out of their underwater skin, and I have seen 2 or 3 of them. So there's one next to him that I know was his this morning, and there's one at the back there in the plants, and there's been a few others that I've seen. So probably, yeah, maybe 3 or 4 over the course of time. Now, those, I'm pretty sure, like I say, weren't laid in here. With the majority of dragonfly and damselfly species, it actually takes them quite a long time, sometimes years, to go through the several stages of essentially their underwater aquatic nymph form, whereas like a butterfly will go from A to B, well, dragonflies take, well, A to F sort of thing, and there's several stages in between. So I'm pretty sure these weren't laid in here. It's probable that I brought them in with some of the pond plants or some of the oxygenating plants. I've obviously bought a few other plants, so again, all it takes is for a few of them to be hidden in amongst the gravel or in amongst the plant when you buy a plant from a garden centre, and there you go, they're in your pond. So that's quite nice to see that, because hopefully they will come back and they'll lay some eggs in here, and we'll have a little flourishing group of them starting to appear in the garden. The other question that I got quite a lot is, what do you do with it? What maintenance do you need to do with it? Well, it depends on how involved you want to be in your pond, to be honest. You could go through and keep it fairly clean and cut back plants and mess around with it fairly often. Personally, with a nature pond, the more you leave it alone, the better it does, to be honest. Obviously, you can see that I've got a lot of plants in here. There is, you know, very little in the way of water or open water left for these guys to get in. And that's just because it's quite a sunny spot in my garden. Well, not today, but normally it's quite a sunny spot in my garden. And having that plant in there means it shades it, it helps keep the algae down, and yeah, just keeps the ecosystem alive in the pond, really. It filters the pond, it keeps a lot of the algae nutrients down. So yeah, it's just a cleaner pond. So the more plants you can get in there, the better. But as for actual maintenance and putting things into the pond, treatment-wise, there's been nothing in there. If I needed to top it up with tap water, I would have used a dechlorinator, but to be honest, I haven't needed to so far. As for what I've put into the pond to keep it clean, well, really all I have done is topped it up a few times, and I have used rainwater in here, and if you watch any of my other videos, rainwater can be a problem with algae with regards to ponds, but there's enough plants in here that it has kept it clean. It just depends how clean your rainwater is. If it's full of nutrients, you might be better using tap water. But if you use tap water, then use a chlorinator to make sure the tap water is essentially got rid of all those heavy metals and horribleness in there. But yeah, anyway, I haven't had to top it up, luckily. The only thing I have put in here is this, which is a barley straw bale. Now, these barley straw bales essentially just break down in the water. They release an enzyme into the water, I believe, that helps break down algae, and it just helps keep the pond cleaner and clearer for longer. You can get liquids as well that you can pour straight in there, and they work pretty much instantly, whereas you've got to wait for a straw bale to break down. It's just a personal preference. But that has helped, and that has kept the algae at bay a little bit, and it's a really natural way of doing it. The only other 2 bits of maintenance that you really need to do, as I've said, is keep on top of the plants. If they're growing out of control or they're getting a little bit crazy, or, you know, you've got breaking down leaves, take them out. You can see I've got a few rose petals in the back here, which I would remove every now and again and get rid of those. You don't want too much breaking down in the pond and creating more work for yourself and more nutrients and more waste. Now, the other thing you do need to do is clean out the little solar powered pump on this pond, and it's really not that difficult. Oh, I don't want to disturb Mr. Dragonfly really. Now, it is attached to a bag of gravel somewhere. It's bringing our oxygenating plant with. I'll just show you how you clean this one out, but it is really quick and easy. With these Blagdon floating solar pumps, they are really simple. Obviously, this is the main panel, so you can just give that one a wipe off and make sure it's clean because it will pick up on more sunlight. We'll remove the fountain head, and then underneath, this is the pump. So you can see it's got like a foam ring that makes it float, and this is the pump. Now, it's got a sponge in the front, so you'll take that one out and just give that one a wash off because, yeah, they'll get a bit mucky and that will stop the pump from running. And then inside the cage, which you can see there's a little cage on the front of the pump, pop that one off once in a while, and inside there you've got your impeller. Now you will need normally a pair of tweezers or a pair of pliers, be really gentle to pull that out, but it's just a cylindrical magnet and you'll give that one a clean every now and again. I can see how clean that one is in there, to be honest. It is pure white and there's no gunk in there, so I'm not going to worry about that. On this occasion, it is literally just this sponge that's quite gross and quite grubby that's going to be slowing down my pump. Oh, and also the lack of sunlight today. Now, with nature ponds, you don't actually have to run a pump if you don't want to. The more plants you've got in there, the better, and it will keep it clean and will keep it oxygenated. I just like the pump because it gives you a bit of noise. It's small enough and the grill is tiny enough that it isn't going to suck in really any animals and cause harm to them, and it just creates a little bit of movement, a little bit of oxygenation. Now today, obviously, the solar pump isn't creating much oxygenation or movement because, well, it's cloudy as it always is in England, so now that that one's clean, it will run again, but when the sun comes out, maybe a little bit later, fingers crossed. Now the sun's come out a little bit, the pump's actually working, which is quite nice. So what's the next question that people were asking? Winterizing this pond, and actually in a weird way, summarizing this pond. Not summarizing as in making it good for the summer. Now the problem with that question is, in all honesty, I am talking to people from all over the world. You know, I've got viewers from the northern states of America that are worried about it in the winter. I've got people from Texas that are worried about it in the summer. I've got people, well, just, yeah, everywhere, all over Europe, all over America. And really, I suppose the thing is, it probably is best to go and see your local shop and have a chat with them and see what they do with nature ponds over the winter. Now, these have been designed to be left outside all year long. There's no reason to bring them inside. There's nothing in the warranty about bringing them inside. So yeah, to be honest, there's no real reason to do it. But if you are worried about nature in your area, one thing I probably would say is that, well, nature is designed to be in your area. So if it freezes and if it drops down to -5 and you get a big ice layer on top of here, well, the nature in your area is probably designed to live in that. And the same here, like, this will stay out all year long. I will not really do anything with it. I might put a net over the top or a bit over the top just to stop any leaves dropping in, but to be honest, that's going to hinder the frogs getting in and out, so it will, be honest, just be left and just let it get onto its own devices. It's small enough that you can net it and clean it out if you need to. There's no real issues with it. Making this pond ready for summer, to be honest, is just giving it enough planting and enough shading. In all honesty, if I was in a really hot country with lots of sun, I'd probably have a lot more bigger leaved plants giving the pond a lot more cover so that, yeah, the sun's just not going to hit it as much. That is going to keep the pond cool. As for winterizing the pond and making sure it's safe in the winter, well, you could cover it, you could wrap the outside to keep it a bit more insulated. There's lots of different things you could do. Now, if you are worried about your pond freezing over completely, to be fair, Blagdon do an ice vent, which is essentially a ring with a few holes in the top of it, and it lets the pond essentially breathe. It's got a small heater, so you would have to plug it in, but it is going to keep an area of ice free, and it's going to allow the pond essentially to breathe. It's going to allow anything to gas off. If there's anything breaking down in the bottom of the pond, that releases gases, and having that area of ice free is going to allow it gas off. But for me, it's just going to stay here. As you see, where I am in England, it's really not going to have any problems. And as you can see, we're protected by a fence, and my house is just here to this side of me, so it is really going to struggle to freeze and have any issues where it is here. The other big question we had on this pond was, is it suitable for fish? Now, in England, personally, I would say no. The problem that you're going to have is most pond fish in England, well, let's be honest, they're goldfish, and they're going to get big, they're going to get chunky, they are going to pollute the water. It's just going to be a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. With fish, you really want a proper filter on it, unless you're talking about a massive pond or a massive lake where there's loads of plants. then you can get away without having a pump and a filter. But in something like this, especially if we have a hot summer, the oxygen levels are just going to drop so quickly, and it's going to get so dirty so quickly. I promise you'll give up on your pond really quickly. But again, I'm talking to people all over the world. So yes, there are going to be parts and places where you are going to be able to put fish in there, because you probably have available to you tiny little fish that would live in something like this. Much warmer countries will have access to much smaller fish that live in the native environment. I've already had loads of comments about people living in certain countries with native species of, I can't even remember now, lots of different fish that are all really small. If that works for you, that works for you, and I'm sure a shoal of tiny little 4 or 5 centimetre fish would work perfectly in here. But again, it is just talking to your local shop, having a chat with them, seeing what they would recommend, and yeah, going with that really. Whoa! You flapping in the wind. You almost took off there, to be fair. What was I saying? So the other question that we got quite a lot of was, what do you do about mosquitoes and mosquito larvae? Now, I can only talk for England, and we don't really get that many problems with that, to be honest. But again, build up the ecosystem in your pond with things like dragonfly, nymphs, frogs, toads, all the tadpoles, things like that. That is going to be their food source. You know, the mosquito larvae are going to be the base level of food for everything. So it might take a little while to build up the ecosystem, and it might take a little while to get on top of things. But to be honest, it's never really been a problem for me. I have spoken to a few people that I know in warmer climates and warmer countries, and they're under the same thing. Once you get an ecosystem going and once you get everything established in a pond, well, the mosquitoes aren't really an issue. The problem is mosquitoes find the pond first. They're always the first thing to find somewhere to lay eggs and somewhere to live. So it might be a few weeks, might be a month or two before the other bigger animals start appearing. But once they do appear, you'll really find that that base level food source disappears. And now we're going to be interrupted. Hello, Roma dogs. You saw me on the floor, didn't you? I'm just talking about the pond. Would you mind moving out the way so that I can finish off the video? Do not touch Mr. Dragonfly. He has been sat there all day without you bothering him. Look, he's there. Leave him alone. Right, can you move so I can finish this video? I'm nearly finished. I'll be back in to play with you then. Hang on 2 minutes. I'm just going to move this silly mutt. Now, where was I? You're an idiot. So yeah, most people are under the same opinion. I might have said this already, but most people that I've spoken to in warmer countries are under the same opinion, that if you get the ecosystem right and you get everything balanced and other animals start turning up, the mosquito larvae just become the food. They're the base level of food for everything. And yeah, once everything else appears, they start eating them. I've really lost my train of thought then. Yeah, anyway. But yeah, I think that's all the questions that you all had, to be honest. I think that should cover the majority of them. If you've got any other questions, drop them down in the comments and let me know, and I'll try and cover them in another video, or I'll just reply back to the comment. Hope you've enjoyed this little snapshot of how this pond's doing 3 months on. I'll bring you back maybe in another 3 months to see how it's all going and see what's changed. And hopefully we might actually have some sun and a summer. I think I've had 3 days of summer so far, so fingers crossed we can have a little bit more. I'll see you in the next one anyway. Oh, you're a long way away.